When I bought the Google Pixel Fold, I wanted it to be good. I heard the camera sucked, the inside screen bezel was crazy, battery life was terrible, the Tensor G2 chip is worse than the Pixel 7 series, and much more. But once I started using the phone, everything changed. For one, the spec sheet is nice. We have the Google Tensor G2 chip in here with 12GB of RAM and 256 or 512 gigabytes of UFS 3.1 storage. Would have liked to see 1TB, but I wouldn't have bought it anyways. There's two battery cells to total 4,821 milliamp hours and allows for around 21 watts of wired and 7.5 watts of wireless charging. No reverse wireless charging, which is one of the annoying things about this phone. The design is common for folding phones, where the screen is glass, while the frame and hinge are metal, and in this case are both glossy multi-alloy steel. The left side has nothing, while the right side is where the power and volume rocker is, of course, with the power button holding the fingerprint scanner. The top is where the loudspeaker, 5G ultra-wideband antenna, and microphone all are, while on the bottom it looks like another 3 microphones, but apparently there's only one. We have the second loudspeaker to give us a stereo feel that's good, but not spectacular. Then we have the USB-C 3.2 Gen 2 port, which allows for 10 gigabit speeds for data transfer, but not HDMI out for some reason. On the back, we get a flat piece of glass with the G logo, while the huge metal camera bump houses a flash, a third microphone, and 3 cameras in the same style as the Pixel 7 Pro. The glass is Gorilla Glass Victus, but don't let that stop you. This is a fairly short phone at 5.5 inches, so the shortest Pixel ever. It is the heaviest though, at 283 grams. And of course, that front glass is a 5.8-inch 1080p OLED 120Hz panel that features a hole punch for the front camera. The screen is capable of 1200 nits for HDR and 1550 nits for peak brightness, never giving me any issues when using this inside or outside. The inside screen and hinge trim is all plastic, with the screen itself being a 7.6-inch 1840 by 2208 flexible OLED display featuring a 120Hz refresh rate just like the outside screen. You'll definitely notice the crease, but the screen brightness is 1000 nits for HDR and 1450 nits for peak brightness, so very similar to the outer screen. These are both HDR panels that honestly look spectacular and feel amazing. The inner screen has a 6.5-inch screen ratio, but somehow it gives off that true tablet feel that Samsung Z Folds don't. The bezels are big on the inside screen, but so are the outside ones. But generally you don't notice the ones on the inside because the outside screen doesn't force you to open up this phone. The outer screen is nice and wide enough to not require you to open up the phone just to get stuff done, something I find myself doing on Z Fold phones a lot. But watching videos on this phone is truly a treat, and the speakers don't disappoint either. Just know that they're not game changing. The battery sounds good, and honestly, it is, for me. I can't discount what lots of people are saying, but I'm getting practically the same as my Z Folds and Pixel 7 Pro battery life. So it's kind of hard for me to complain about the battery life on the Pixel Fold. Just like the speakers, the battery life is not game changing, but it is good. I will agree that charging does feel kind of slow. One thing to note is that we get newer connectivity, like the 5G ultra wideband if you do have this antenna, but also Bluetooth 5.2, Wi-Fi 6E, and IPX8 dust and, well, just water resistance, I guess. This processor hasn't really been an issue for me. Playing games, which is what the design is perfect for, is a blast. The one issue that I noticed is that this phone does get warm and dims quickly. Now we are talking about graphic intensive gaming or heavy background apps, but it's something I didn't notice on my Pixel 7 Pro, even though it is actually a common thing, and screens do dim on normal Pixel phones. It gets warm near the right side, which is where the processor is, so I guess you can try to use the phone with that in mind. But when using normal apps, the whole experience is just a treat, and honestly something I wasn't expecting at all. This is something that only the Oppo Find N can replicate, as most folding phones are pretty tall phones. I mean, this is ironically the smallest Pixel ever, yet at the same time it opens up to be bigger than any Pixel or Nexus phone. That said, only by a little. Actually, they listened to me making this phone almost the same width as a Google Nexus 6 on their first try. But this is a Gen 1 of the Pixel folding phone, so what are the issues? Well, like I said, not the camera or the battery, but they both bring up weird emissions. The Pixel 5 started the reverse wireless charging trend, and the Samsung Z Fold and Flips have this, just like the Pixel 7, 7 Pro, 8, and 8 Pro, but the Pixel Fold doesn't. Even then, charging speeds are slower in wired and wireless when compared to the Pixel 7 Pro, which is what this is closely related to. The front camera is strange too, acting similar to the Samsung Z Fold 3 and newer, but not as bad. Face Unlock is actually my biggest complaint with this. Of course, we have the fingerprint scanner on the side and Face Unlock, but Face Unlock only works on the outer screen. So if you open up the phone, you'd have to use your finger to unlock the phone if you didn't want to put in your code. And while we have the screen open, it doesn't feel like it's open all the way. This can be an okay thing given the design and hinge, but this is what Google says about the hinge. Custom dual access quad cam synchronized mechanism, fluid friction across the full 180-degree range of motion to securely support different postures. This is not full 180 degrees. Again, not a big issue, but they are lying to us now. It doesn't affect much though, as you can see that the crease is here, but even in the dark there are times where the crease can warp the image just enough to where if you do notice it, it can bother you. Another issue is continuity. I won't harp on this much because it looks like Google is working on putting this into the software, but this should be a standard folding and flipping thing where you start on the small screen and open up to the big screen. That's fine and it works on here. The issue is doing the reverse works on my Z Fold and Razr Plus, but does not work on the Pixel Fold. Again, it does look like Google is working on this. And the aspect ratio is weird, where some apps look awkward as a tablet app, but also the whole thing is a tablet. This is fine, but I would like some customization that pretty much every Z Fold has had since the beginning. I normally use one homepage, but when you open up this phone, it requires two. Now this aspect is fine, but the home screen mirrors, meaning that whatever you do on the inside, the outside does the same. See the issue? This is a simple fix that Google is hopefully working on because some apps in operation should look like a tablet while others shouldn't. But really, a lot of these issues are software and rules, while only a few of these issues are hardware limitations like reverse wireless charging and the hinge setup. Now the cameras on the other hand aren't as bad as what people say. They are somewhat different cameras from the average Pixel, but this is what you get. The front camera is a 9.5 megapixel fixed focus sensor that looks pretty decent. Yeah, 9.5 is weird, but we do get 4K 60 frames per second out of this, and some solid shots. The other front camera is an 8 megapixel fixed focus sensor, which again looks pretty decent. Shot-wise is very similar, but you do only get 1080p at 30 frames per second on this sensor. That said, this is more than fine for video calling, something the Z Fold 3 can't say. Now on to the rear cameras, let's start with the ultra-wide. It is a 10.8 megapixel fixed focus sensor, which means that they did remove macro from this $1,800 phone. Still, the shots complement the main, just lack the ability to focus closely. Then we have a 48 megapixel main wide angle sensor that is not the same as the 50 megapixel found in the Pixel 7 Pro for some reason. Regardless, it is still optically stabilized and features laser autofocus, and the shots come out looking on point. And even the 2x sensor crop option is still here. They didn't take that away. Then the last sensor is another sensor that got a huge megapixel downgrade, but the quality is close or the same. This is a 10.8 megapixel 5x telephoto sensor that is also optically stabilized and downgraded from the 48 megapixel one found in the Pixel 7 Pro. But the Fold has a better aperture at f3.05 over the f3.5 in the 7 Pro. As for video, we do get 4K 60 frames per second on all the rear sensors with switching during recording, and 4K 60 on the front camera as well. These are actually solid cameras, but the numbers say that they're not. But at the end of the day, you decide what looks good. Enjoy. For me, this is a win. On Google's first try, they did what I wanted Samsung to do with the Fold series and did it with weird numbers for the cameras. But they did it. By no means am I saying that this phone is perfect. I have a section for flaws because this phone is flawed after all. I mean, the price is not that nice either, but the phone is over a year old and the Pixel Fold successor is either here or right around the corner. This phone is heavy. There's lots of little confusing software choices. The price is not that nice. I mean, new, this should have been where it's at now, but $1,800 is too much, even if it is cheaper than some folding phones at launch. We have Android 14 on here, which isn't a surprise, but software support ends June 2026, while security patches stop June 2028. But of course, those can get expanded if Google decides. I think Google nailed it with the Pixel Fold because somehow this became my favorite phone to use. Besides the small flaws that I brought up, I can't really find any reason not to recommend this phone. It is kind of expensive though, even in the used market. But what do you think? Let me know, subscribe to be a part of the 1%, and as always, thanks for watching.